Hello Norfolk and Nottinghamshire classes, welcome to your Destination Read It lesson today. Varjak Poor by S.F. Syed. This is our 10th lesson of 25 lessons. Okay, you should all have everything ready for your lesson. We've been doing this for a long time now. You must make sure you've got a copy of the story, a strategy prompt sheet, a pencil or a pen, and a piece of paper or your home learning book. If you don't have those things, you must make sure you go and get them ready by press pause and go and get them together, and then you can continue with the lesson. So, just like in our previous lessons, any key words, any important words for you will be written in red, questions for you to answer in blue, and any writing time in green. Okay, Varjak Poor by S.F. Syed. Let's say the tagline together. This cat must learn to fight. We're going to continue with strategy number 3, which is inference. What does inference mean, and why do good readers make inferences? Say your answer out loud, then make a note of it on your home learning book or your piece of paper. Do that now. Okay, so inference means to read between the lines. If you're making inferences, you're looking out for clues. You're being like a detective, looking for the clues that the author has left, and you're doing this because you want to understand the text more. And authors sometimes leave key information out so that the reader wants to keep reading and to find out more. It makes reading much more exciting when there's lots to infer. Okay, so here we have Ingrid. Everybody say, hi, Ingrid. And Ingrid is an inferer. And she has got her magnifying glass to look for clues, and she's a detective with her detective outfit on. She's looking for those clues left by the author. And what is she thinking? What is her calculation, her inference calculation that she is thinking? I want you to say it now. Okay, so you should have said that text clues plus your schema equals your inference. So good readers, like Ingrid, like you, use clues that come along in the text, and you put them together with your background knowledge or your schema to make an inference. And when authors of books don't tell you everything about a character and events, that is when good readers infer. So, here's our vocabulary for this lesson. My turn, clammy, your turn. My turn, clammy, your turn. So clammy, it means you're unpleasantly damp and sticky, and a time when you might be clammy is if you've been running around the playground or running around in pee and you've got all hot, and if you touch your skin it's a bit sticky with the sweat, and that means that you're all clammy. My turn, exposed, your turn. My turn, exposed, your turn. And exposed is a past tense word. Expose, exposed. And it means that you're in a helpless and dangerous situation in this meaning. And in the context of where we're going to read it, it means that you're feeling very helpless, you're in a dangerous position, you're exposed. My turn, shrieked, your turn. My turn, shrieked, your turn. Shrieked. Another past tense word, past tense from shriek. And this is a high-pitched screeching sound. He shrieked. Very high-pitched, not a very nice sound if somebody shrieks or if they shrieked. 1 mark and 2 mark answers. Let's do this together. 1 mark questions need a short, snappy answer. And again, 1 mark questions need a short, snappy answer. Great. What about 2 mark questions? Let's do it together. 2 mark questions need a PE answer. And again, 2 mark questions need a PE answer. And I hope you're all joining in and saying that really clearly. It's really important that we know our 1 mark and our 2 mark questions. Okay, so we are up to chapter 12, page 86. Gosh, this is going quickly. It's such a great book. It's going quickly because we're enjoying it. I'm going to read to you and you're going to follow along. Okay, are you ready? Page 86, chapter 12. Let's just remind ourselves of what happened in the last chapter. That's right, I just flipped back to have a quick look. Varjak has been left all alone. So he's met Tam, the shaggy chocolate brown cat, and he's met Holly, who's the black and white cat, and they've left him and he's all alone again. Varjak walked in the other direction. He shivered as he walked. The grass felt wet and clammy, cold beneath his paws. The sky was clear after the storm, but it looked hollow and black, as though the rain had washed even the moon and stars away. It was much worse being alone now that he'd had a moment with Holly and Tam. It made him realize how alone he'd been before and how lonely he was again now. Still, he had to get on with his mission. Find a dog, take it home, beat the gentleman and his cats. The city loomed up ahead. From the hill he'd seen it and how it fitted together, but on ground level he couldn't see further than the nearest building. Even the smallest of them blocked his way. Their thick brick walls reared up before him, higher than the Contessa's house. The night was full of strange sounds too. Things were rumbling, bells ringing, sirens wailing. What did it all mean? How was he going to find his way through it? He badly needed help. Holly and Tam seemed to know what they were doing, but they were gone and they weren't coming back. Varjak walked through a gate at the park's edge. Behind it was a narrow pavement with a wide black road lined by orange street lamps. They looked like shiny iron trees, like spiny iron trees with clusters of light on their branches. Instead of the sweet scent of fruit, they smelled sharp and electric, buzzing nervously above him. He felt exposed in their glare. Further down the pavement, he could hear people, groups of them. Some were talking, others were laughing or shouting at each other. His fur prickled, remembering the men who came to the Contessa's house that night. And we're going to stop there. So I've got a question. What does the phrase, his fur prickled, tell you about how Varjak is feeling? So it says his fur prickled, remembering the men who came to the Contessa's house. So now use your background knowledge, your schema about cats. Why might their fur prickle? How does this tell you about how Varjak is feeling? Well, I've said that the phrase his fur prickled tells me that Varjak is feeling angry and annoyed when he remembers the men who came to the Contessa's house. He's feeling angry. He's feeling annoyed. I want you to say your answer out loud and then write it down on your piece of paper or your home learning book. What does the phrase his fur prickled tell you about how Varjak is feeling? Do that now. Press pause. Great. We're going to keep reading. We're halfway down page 87. He didn't want to be seen. It felt too risky out here on his own. Across the road, there was a quiet-looking alleyway between the brick houses. It looked a safer place to be. Varjak stepped onto the pavement and froze in his tracks. Before him, lined up on the edge of the road, was a whole column of shiny metal monsters. They stood in single file, stock still. They weren't moving or making any sound. Their eyes were dull and lightless, their round black wheels at rest. But they were dogs, and this was Varjak's chance to talk to them. "Excuse me," he said. They didn't react, not even a flicker in the eyes. Perhaps they were sleeping. He took a deep breath. He crept closer to them, ready to run if they suddenly awoke. He slunk onto the road, stretched out a paw, and gingerly touched a monster's smooth metal flank. We're going to stop. There's lots of clues that have been left there. Why didn't the dogs react to Varjak when he said, "Excuse me"? Have you worked out from the clues? Why didn't these dogs react? Why didn't they jump up and say hello or do anything when Varjak said, "Excuse me"? Have you worked it out? Have you worked it out from the clues? Okay, have a think. Say your answer out loud, then write it down on your piece of paper or your home learning book. Do that now. Press pause. Okay, so have you worked out why the dogs didn't react when Varjak said, "Excuse me"? And you should have said something like this. The dogs didn't react to Varjak because they're not really dogs. They're cars. That's why they didn't do anything. They're cars, just parked cars. He's got confused. He thinks that the cars are dogs, but they're not. And that's why they didn't react or do anything. Let's keep reading. It was cold, not asleep, but dead. Varjak shivered at the thought. Far away, but closing in, something shrieked, something roared. Varjak's heart thudded in his chest as he turned to face it. The shrieking, roaring noise grew louder. It was a pack of dogs, live ones, and they were coming down the road towards him. He'd forgotten how fast and wild they were. In motion, they blurred beneath the street lights. Their yellow eyes were open, so round and bright they seemed to pierce his skull. He couldn't meet their gaze. He had to look away. No wonder people were scared of them. Varjak quaked as the monsters roared past, one after another. They were massive, mighty, unstoppable. In their wake came that foul, choking smell. It made him cough and cough and cough. He cowered in the lethal wind, watched the red eyes at the back recede into the distance. What should I do, Jalal? Awareness, the second skill. Before you do anything, you must know what you are dealing with. Assume nothing. Be sure of the facts. All right. The fact was, these dogs wouldn't notice him if he just sat there and called out to them. They wouldn't even hear him. He had to make one of them stop. That came first. There was only one way to do it, and Varjak's stomach tightened as he realized what it meant. He was going to have to stand in front of one of them, in the middle of the road, as they sped towards him. Then they'd see him and would have no choice but to stop. It would take courage, but he could do it. He could do it! He was sure he could. Deep inside him, something shrugged its shoulders and walked away. Absolutely not. It said, I'm not Jalal. I'm not even Julius. The dogs are never going to stop for me. Even if they see me, they'll just run me over. They'll kill me. Look at them. They're huge, heartless monsters. They don't slow down for anything. It's pointless even to try. But he had to try. The elder poor gave his life so he could try, him and no one else. That sacrifice would mean nothing unless Varjak was prepared to risk his own life. And hadn't he always wanted a chance to prove himself as a proper Mesopotamian blue? We're going to stop it there. And I want to know, why does Varjak want to prove himself as a proper Mesopotamian blue? Why? Why does he want to be like the other cats in his family? Why? Why is it so important to him to prove this? I want you to have a think about what you've read so far, what you know about Varjak, what you've heard about his family and how they treat him. Have a think about everything that's happened in the story so far, and that will help you come up with your answer. And then you're going to say your answer out loud, and then you're going to write it down. It's a 2-mark question, so you're going to have a point, and then you're going to back it up, and there's lots of evidence from the back, from the book that we've read that you can remember, that you can use to help you here. Why does Varjak want to prove himself as a proper Mesopotamian blue? Do that now. Press pause. Okay, so here's what I said. I said that here's my point. I think that Varjak wants to prove himself as a proper Mesopotamian blue because the elder poor sacrificed his life. So Varjak thinks he should too. So the elder poor gave up his life for Varjak, and so Varjak thinks that he should do this too. And I think this because in the text it says the elder poor gave his life so he could try, him and no one else. So if you remember back to the garden, the elder poor went back to stop the black cats so that Varjak could escape and give it a go and try, and so that is why Varjak poor knows it's important, and this will help to prove that he's a proper Mesopotamian blue. That's my answer. What do you put? Okay. Turn over to page 90, and we've got a couple of pictures of the cars there, which Varjak thinks are dogs, and he's going to try and make it stop. And I'm wondering, oh gosh, is that a good idea? I'm not sure what's going to happen to Varjak. Varjak closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and he strode out into the road to the very centre of the dog's path. Another pair of yellow eyes appeared in the distance. He could smell the foul breath from here. He could hear the deafening roar. The tails were right. These monsters filled his heart with fear. It clawed at his insides as they came towards him. "Stop!" he called. We have a picture, so we know that it's not really a dog. We know it's a car that's coming towards him. The eyes were big and dazzling. Varjak looked straight into them. He ignored the piercing pain they made in his head. He ignored his muscles screaming at him to run from this oncoming beast. He stood his ground. He remembered the elder paw in the garden, facing up to the gentleman's black cats. So brave. That was what he needed now. "Please stop," he shouted. "I have to talk to you." The eyes grew bigger and bigger. The monster was coming closer and closer, and behind it he could see others of its kind, a whole pack of them. Good. He was smack in front of them. They couldn't get past without going through him. Jalal could do this. I can do this. The monsters kept coming, and still he stood his ground, though he had to dig claws into tarmac to stop himself running. "I need your help," he yelled. "Please, please, please." But the monsters weren't slowing. They were speeding. They were shrieking, roaring, bearing down on him, huge, deadly. "Stand your ground. Stand your ground." And look at those cars coming towards them. They look really terrifying. What great artistry skill is there. And here we go. And this picture is really, really useful to help us to really see what's happening. We've got the currents going over Varjak. We can see Varjak under the current. Look at how beautifully this, on page 94, has been written almost like a poem. Brap! Fur fluttered. Fur flattened. Monsters roared over his head. To his left, to his right, to his left, and were gone. That's so poetically written. I want you to read with me. We don't often do this, but I want you to read this part with me, page 94 with me. Are you ready with Brap? Let's go. Brap! Fur fluttered. Fur flattened. Monsters roared over his head. To his left, to his right, to his left, and were gone. So clever, such a clever piece of writing. Varjak stayed flat on the ground, cowering, crushing himself into the tarmac, even though the dogs were gone, and all his hopes of saving the family with them. He crawled across the hard black road to the other side, still not daring to stand up straight. His body shook with shock. If he'd moved, if he'd even breathed as they passed over him, they would have destroyed him. He'd come within a whisker of death. He knew that, but that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was that he had failed. And so we're going to stop there. That is the end of our chapter. We've got a question to answer before we finish. I want to know, why does Varjak think he's failed? Why does he think he's failed? He just said he had failed. Why? What's he failed at? What's he failed to do? What did he want to do? And what didn't he do? Okay, have a little think. Say your answer out loud and then write it down on your piece of paper or home learning book. Why does Varjak think he has failed? Do that now. Press pause. Okay, so I said, I think Varjak thinks he has failed because, here's my answer. He was unable to make the cars/dogs stop so he could talk to them. he wasn't able to make the cars stop. And I put cars/dogs because he thinks they're dogs. We know they're cars. He wanted to make them stop so he could talk to them, and he couldn't do that. So therefore, he thinks he's failed. Okay, that's the end of our lesson today. And like every other chapter in Varjak Paw, you don't want to stop reading it. You want to keep on reading it. But we've got to wait till Monday when we're going to be continuing our strategy inference. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you, on your piece of paper, on your home learning book, to make a prediction about what you think will happen next in the story. What do you think will happen in the next chapter? You could even draw a picture. There's lots of pictures in the story so far. Have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we will see you on Monday. Take care. Bye.